Welcome to the STCC Library APA Citation Refresher. This presentation will cover rules and guidelines for the APA's 7th edition, which was launched in October 2019. For information about the 6th edition, please visit the STCC Library website. So what is a citation? According to the Online Dictionary of Library and Information Science, a citation is any written or spoken reference to an authority or precedent or to the verbatim words of another speaker or writer. Citations let the reader of your paper know that you used someone else's ideas to support your own research and conclusions. Every student at some point questions why we even need citations. And while giving credit to others' work and avoiding plagiarism are good enough reasons, it's just as important to give the reader of your paper the opportunity to learn more about where you got your information. A citation provides an address that your reader can visit in order to learn more. There are many different citation styles. If you've taken an English course, you've probably used MLA. Nursing, occupational therapy, and the social sciences use APA. Others include AMA, Chicago, and Turabian. Within APA citation, there are two different types of citation. In-text citation is when you give credit in your paper right when you use an idea. Bibliographic, or references, is when you list all of the sources you've used in your paper on the last page. The first thing we're going to cover in this course is the difference between quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, all three of which you will probably use in your paper. Quoting is the easiest of these concepts to grasp. Quoting means you are using another's words verbatim. To indicate this, you'll put the words within quotation marks, and then you'll cite to the original source. Paraphrasing is a trickier concept. When you paraphrase, you are putting the ideas of another author into your own words, but this doesn't mean you can just replace each word with a synonym. You need to change the words and sentence structure with the purpose of explaining the idea in a way that fits the tone and style of your own writing. Paraphrasing also requires a citation. Finally, you may want to use summary as a way of consolidating another's work into a short explanation. This is great for briefly describing another entire work or the study methods used in another work. You still need to credit the original source, but not necessarily with a formal citation. Let's look at some examples of each concept. For our examples, we will be using the following excerpt from the article Levels of Emotional Intelligence of Nursing Students. The article was published in the International Journal of Caring Sciences, Volume 7, Issue 3, pages 936 to 945. It was written by Serrett and Besser. The excerpt reads as follows. In this study, which was conducted in order to determine emotional intelligence level of the students, it was found out that the emotional intelligence of 52.2% of the participant students was normal. The emotional intelligence of 30.1% of the students was low, and the emotional intelligence of 17.4% of the participant students was high analyzed. Quoting this study is very simple. We will use the exact words of the original authors in quotation marks with a citation at the end. The study found that, quote, the emotional intelligence of 52.2% of the participant students was normal, the emotional intelligence of 30.1% of the students was low, and the emotional intelligence of 17.4% of the participant students was high analyzed. End quote. Citation. Period. This example of paraphrasing shows how you could take the results of that study and sum them up into a shorter sentence in your own words. The study found that the emotional intelligence of a little more than half of the analyzed students was normal, but a significant amount of students tested low, followed by a citation and a period. Notice that there is no need for quotation marks because we are not using the author's exact words. However, it is still their original idea and needs to be cited properly. Now take a look at this example of a summary. We've summarized the entire study in just a sentence by writing, Sarah and Besser measured the emotional intelligence of nursing students and found that, of the students studied, most had normal emotional intelligence scores. The summary does not give any concrete numbers, nor does it get into the specifics of how the study was conducted. It's very simply a sentence that sums up the entire study so that your readers can understand the context of the information that you're using. Anyone new to APA style struggles with when to use quoting or paraphrasing or summary. The short answer is that this knowledge only comes with practice. The more you do it, the better you'll get. But reading professional writing is a great way to see how it's done. So when you're reading articles that you're going to cite in your own paper, pay attention to how the authors have cited to other studies, so you can see examples of how it's done. This chart can serve as a guide for when you're not sure which method to use. The first box explains quotes. You should use quotes sparingly. They are best for using very specific ideas or wording. You can use quotes for interesting points or surprising findings. The second option is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is what you should be using the most, and it should be well blended into your writing. Paraphrasing is great for sharing data or results of a study, and rather than using the exact numbers, you can use your own words to explain the findings. Finally, summaries should be used for expressing the main idea of a study in your own words. It should be significantly shorter than the original, and you still need to credit the source, but not necessarily with a formal citation. Next, we will be discussing the basics of in-text citation. Formatting the in-text citation. When you are going to include a citation in your paper, you need to introduce the thought or idea using what is called a signal phrase. There are 3 examples here of signal phrases. The author writes, according to one study, Smith states that. Work these into your writing with correct grammar. A drop quote is when you use a quote or an idea without introducing it first. You will probably receive marks off from your instructors if you don't properly introduce the information. The actual citation will come either at the beginning or the end of the idea you're using, sometimes both. You'll see an example. You need to include the author's last name, the year of publication, and the page number. And again, make sure you use a signal phrase. Here are a couple of examples. The signal phrase is in blue, and the citation is highlighted in yellow. The first example reads, one study found that the emotional intelligence of 52.2% of the participant students was normal, the emotional intelligence of 30.1% of the students was low, and the emotional intelligence of 17.4% of the participant students was high analyzed. The signal phrase is at the beginning. One study found that. At the end is the citation. Notice that the end quotation comes first, open parentheses, the author's last names, a comma, the year of publication, a comma, the page number with P period, and then a close parentheses, and then the period that ends the sentence. The second example includes the citation at the beginning and the end. Serrett and Besser, in parentheses 2014, found that the emotional intelligence of a little more than half of the analyzed students was normal, but a significant amount of students tested low. Notice that there is no period yet. Open parentheses, page number, close parentheses, then the period. You will always need these three pieces of information: the author, the date, and the page number. Where you put them in the sentence is up to you, as long as you always include those three important pieces of information. It's very common to be missing pieces of information when you're using another source. If you do not have an author, you can use a shortened version of the title in quotation marks, where the author's name would typically go. If you do not have a year or a publication date, you can use lowercase n period, lowercase d period, which stands for no date. If you do not have a page number, you need to count the paragraphs and cite to the paragraph number. Rather than using P period, you will use PARA period, which stands for paragraph. Check out Part 2 to learn about the APA references page.